Yeah, in the forces, this thing, how do you know someone's a Harrier pilot? They'll tell you. So, in a previous life, I was in the army for 16 years. So my principal trade there was leadership. I was an officer there. However, the continuing theme throughout my career was bomb disposal. And so I did operational tours there. I did 4 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan as a operator kind of wandering off down the road. So that's me doing the long walk in 𝒂𝒊𝒌𝒆. That's the first time I walked down towards a live device to go and poke it and kick it and see what happens to it. And obviously it went okay because there's me coming back. So what I'm going to talk about is how I'm just going to start the time on here because otherwise I'm going to completely lose track of what. Excellent. So I'm going to talk about how the Army leads using mission command, and that's kind of how it leads operationally. And I'm going to then talk about how I use that mission command to speed up how we did continuous improvement within the bomb disposal team. Because quite literally, continuous improvement is life and death. Because if you're not improving faster than the insurgents, it's not going to go end well for you. So, bomb disposal. Predominantly, it's a team activity. So this was my team in 𒂂💑, and we would get a call from an army unit saying they'd found a device or something suspicious. They want us to come out and make it go away for them. We would deploy in our vehicles, and we had an infantry escort to get us there and back and keep us alive on those routes. When we get there, we'd normally assess what's going on. We'd send our robot down, and then when the first one died because it's too hot, we'd send the second one down, and hopefully that would do something about it. What we were aiming to do is to identify the device and then disrupt it. So when we say disrupt, this is a metal tube full of water, and a small explosive charge on the back end of it just fires water into the device and pulls it apart really quickly. So that's called disruption. And ideally, we'd use the robot to do that and search around the area. But sometimes we couldn't, or sometimes we'd disrupt it, but we weren't sure. But anyway, whatever happens, eventually, I was going to put the suit on and walk down there, either to confirm that the robot has done its job, but because the robot couldn't do it, I then have to go and do it. Or unfortunately, as soon as it got hotter, when one robot was kind of broken down to there, one robot was broken down to there, then eventually you just have to go down and walk down and do it yourself because, yeah, we work better in heat than machines do. And then at the end of it, we'd pack up and go back to camp and get ready to go and do it all again. So, improving slower than the enemy. Projects. Now, I'm sure everyone's involved with projects, delivering these things. Obviously, the government can move really slowly on this. I mean, you see how long it takes to get an aircraft carrier and stuff like that. I think they're looking 20-year cycles for some delivery and stuff. Obviously, wartime, you can deliver things a bit faster. However, 2003, 2004, after the invasion of Iraq had gone, all the initial patrolling down in 𒂂💑 is being done mainly in just Land Rovers. There's no armour to it, but it was a permissive environment. Then the insurgency starts happening, and people are shooting at us, and they're using bombs to try and target us. Now, because it's just a soft skin, just the fragmentation from a mortar bomb will just go straight through that. So we bring out what they call snatch Land Rovers. So these were developed for Northern Ireland, and they protect from small roadside bombs, and also small arms fire, pistols, rifles, that sort of thing. So the insurgents start using explosively formed projectiles, EFPs. Okay? And these were normally triggered by a little passive infrared sensor peeking out, tunnel down there, so when you drove past it, it would see your vehicle and fire these projectiles at you. Again, that would go straight through that vehicle. So procurement, they then start getting these, which will stop it. So the insurgents say, oh, we're not defeating those. So they start using shaped charges. So this is more of a cone designed to go through heavy armour. I'm just giving an indication. So a rifle bullet is travelling at 1.2 kilometres a second. One of these travelling at 4 kilometres a second. One of the shaped charges on there, about 14 kilometres a second. So it's a real step change in what speed it's going through the armour at. Now, all these projects are taking months or years to deliver and get them out to the soldiers. So we can't wait that long. The insurgents are changing up within a matter of days or months. So for us to change at their pace, we had to actually, the only thing we could really change was around what we call TTPs, our tactics, our techniques, and our procedures. Okay, good. So it was really vital that we were changing up around kind of constantly reviewing how do we work. So if there was an attack that penetrated the armour, well, what can we do to, we don't have more armour, we don't have better vehicles. What can we do to prevent that attack? Okay. So on the bomb disposal side, we've had the concept of, we've had continuous improvement in the way we work for a long period. So the first bomb disposal robots in Northern Ireland in the 70s, it was quite literally a bomb disposal operator buying an electric tractor, electric wheelbarrow from a DIY store, fixing a couple of ropes to pull it from and to steer it, and sending it down the road to try and do something to a bomb. And then they got more and more sophisticated, and now it's kind of big business, and they have virtual reality headsets and haptic feedback into gloves and all that sort of stuff. But it started off with just a bomb disposal operator thinking, I don't want to keep on walking down to this stuff. I want to send something else down there to poke it. This is Manchester, 1996. The IRA called for a warning. So it's day before a Euro 96 match, about 50 to 60,000 people in this area. That truck bomb about 1,500 kilograms of explosives. Now, the IRA at the time were primarily around attacking infrastructure in civilian targets. And so they would normally put out car bombs or truck bombs and then phone through a warning, and the army, the police would then start evacuating and then call in an army bomb disposal team to try and stop it functioning. And you can see there that the robots got there just in time, but they couldn't take the action because they found they saw some people were still within the cordon area, so they had to stop. And while the people got out of the cordon area, the device functioned, and Manchester got a nice shiny new city centre. So, to try and stop car bombs, bomb disposal have a thing called RAP. And it's the idea, it's a small explosive charge that they stick into the vehicle, and it, again, it just pulls the whole device apart. You see it's quite destructive, but it's not nearly as destructive as 1.5 tons of explosives. So it's a race. The IRA putting the car bombs out and wanting to give enough time to evacuate the area, but not enough time for bomb disposal to do something about it. But we need to get there and do something about it. So for us, speed is everything. And you can see on the Manchester one, even down to the seconds, the wheelbarrow was there pointing through about to fire it, and it was just too late. So this is my team in Northern Ireland, and we were rehearsing these drills every day, at least once. Some days we would have a kind of a focus day and we'd just practice it again all day. Now, I don't know if you, those of you here for Steve's, for the first talk about the hot washes. Now, that's absolutely what we were doing. After every rehearsal, every test, we'd have a hot wash. And some of them would video it as well. We would sit at the hot wash, be round watching the video playback. And it's what are we looking for? So it's what can we do to knock, and we're looking at marginal gains here. What can we do to knock seconds off it? So we're trying to reduce time, and we're trying to make it more less risky. Less risky of something going wrong. So, for example, if you're trying to drive the wheelbarrow off in a rush, you might topple it over and the wheelbarrow rolls over. Or if you're in a rush, you might not connect the weapons systems correctly. Things like that. So how can we minimise the risk of something going wrong when everyone's under massive pressure? It might be snowing, it might be mega cold. You might have been on job after job. You might not have slept for the last 30 hours. How do we minimise the risk of something going wrong? And also, how do we get it faster and faster and faster? So if we identified things, we would experiment with it. If it worked, then we'd write it into our recipes, and that's our new way of doing it. And we'd let the other bomb disposal teams know this is how we're doing it. And then vice versa. So we're learning off each other. So it's that constant development. And also the timings that people could do. So there'll be kind of a monthly visit from the officer commanding who would come down. And one of the things they would always inspect is your ability to do this. And you'll get timed. And those timings went up on the board for the rest of the detachments to know. So it's that kind of that friendly competition, again, that Steve's talking about with the boat by boat. We had team by team. every month, can you get the top of the leaderboard against the other teams doing this. So we've got this continuous improvement going on. I'm now just going to talk briefly about the doctrine of mission command. So mission command is how the British Army and many other militaries lead. And the idea is essentially telling people what you want them to achieve, not how to do it. Okay? So it's almost that complete opposite of command and control. It's that you're really setting objectives and then let people get on with it. And the reason the army do it is because in warfare, it's absolutely vital that when there are opportunities, you can exploit those opportunities faster than the enemy. And this gives us that capability, because it now pushes that ability to make decisions right the way down to the most junior soldier and the most junior leader, because they know what their boss is trying to achieve, and they know what their boss's boss is. We always go two up. So they're always aware of what the situation is and what people are trying to achieve. So if they spot that opportunity that isn't necessarily their mission at the time, they can exploit that. So where did it come from? It's not a new concept. It started being used large scale at the end of the Napoleonic Wars, where you started getting armies kind of 100,000 plus, where the old traditional idea of a general standing up on the hilltop with dispatch riders and flags and stuff like that and commanding the whole battle from the hilltop, that was going because you had armies spread over miles and miles and well over the line of sight. So they have to start giving their orders to their deputy generals on, this is what we want you to achieve. And it was really formalised by the Prussians. And that von Moltke the Elder, I'm sure a lot of you heard I paraphrase here, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Or with those with children, no plan survives contact with a toddler. Same geezer said that. He's good for sayings. If in doubt, just claim it's von Moltke the Elder. There was a von Moltke the Junior and middle and stuff as well. There's loads of them. And they also, all sorts of things. Anyway, it got adopted by Western nations in the 80s and 90s as a way of countering the sheer mass of the Soviet Union. The Western armies were a lot smaller and they needed something to give that edge. So a force multiplier. And then used massively through, so that's Afghanistan, used also in Afghanistan and Iraq, because again, teams working over large distances, often a long way from senior leadership. So how does it work? Now, I'm not going to read all through that. You can read as well as I can. But one thing I'm going to really focus on is trust. So the trust, it's got to be two-way. So the leader's got to trust the subordinates to do the right thing and to take initiative. The subordinates have got to trust the leaders to provide the right direction and also have their back and to provide them the right resources. And in combat situations, to provide the right constraints. So you may, for example, if you're sending a team to attack up a hill, you say, don't go to the right of that or don't go to the left of that. And those constraints are really important because they may be crossing into someone else's area or where their artillery is going to drop or something like that. So those constraints can be life and death. And the juniors need to trust that their leaders are giving them the right constraints. Obviously, we all know trust is earned. However, in this sort of situation, especially when you're working with new people, trust has to be assumed, really, and then you build up on it. And we'll talk a bit later about how to build on building trust. The other element is, if there is an issue with trust, if trust breaks down, it's the leader's responsibility. It's the leader's responsibility to fix it. Okay? So, I'm going to go now through each of these. There's a few user anecdotes to pull out these. So preparing to use it. So preparing is largely around the training and getting people in the state, in the right mind and the right level of knowledge to use mission command. Mutual understanding, providing direction, and then providing support and resources. This is I don't know if you can just see there, there's a little IED buried there, and this was a secondary IED I dealt with. So there'd been a first IED function to target a vehicle, and then they left a second IED to target the follow-on people. So again, just dealing with that sort of thing on site. So how to use mission command. In the army, it's just baked into the training. Almost everything around the training is based on that. So up there you've got Sandhurst, so that's the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. It's been training officers since kind of early 19th century. And all the way through, it's about training leadership, and it's about using mission command. Soldiers get trained right the way from the start on being on the receiving side of it, and then as they're training up to be non-commissioned officers and leaders in their own right, again, they're learning how to use it. It's all written down in the Army Leadership Doctrine, and if you're interested, if you want to start learning more about this, the Army, it's kind of skewed down, so the Centre for Army Leadership is a great resource on not just mission command, but all forms of leadership. They've got a big thing on the moment about followership. Really nice conference coming up on that that's you can attend online. But again, there's lots of information on leadership on that. So, the first element, building that. So once people understand how to use mission command, it's then building that mutual understanding of the situation. Now, this is my bomb disposal team in 𝒂𝒅𝒄𝒌, and we were using mission command on an everyday basis for operations. So when we were deploying out to deal with a device, then we'd be using mission command. So things like I'll be telling my infantry commander, right, you need to get us to this grid reference. How he gets us there, the route, I don't particularly care. The formation of the vehicles, everything like that. I mean, we had baked in SOPs, this is how we travelled. But the infantry commander, that corporal had designed that. He took us all at least once a week and we rehearsed all of it so that everyone knew what to do. But it was his responsibility. I just said, get us there. Okay. In slightly more words, maybe. But what I wanted to do was actually, we want to start this continuous improvement cycle, but I wanted to move faster because Northern Ireland, all I was an operator. Here, though, I had a lot of other tasks, and I couldn't be there all the time. I couldn't be driving this continuous improvement cycle. Plus, we had a lot more people coming in who weren't from bomb disposal, who were from the infantry side of things, who weren't used to this kind of background to continuous improvement that we had within bomb disposal. So I really wanted to drive it. So I decided I was going to use mission command as a way to drive continuous improvement, not just on the operational side. So, first of all, we want to build that mutual understanding. So, what the situation, what's the background? And again, it's those sitting down and having those conversations so that we really made sure that everyone in the team, right the way down to the kind of the most junior and newest infantry soldier, kind of all the way up, everyone knew exactly what our team was there to do and why we existed, what was our purpose. Okay? And then we start talking about, well, what's my intent for, how do we achieve that? So the purpose is we're there to keep people safe and return a situation to normal. Okay, so when an IED is there, we're there to get rid of it and return the situation to normal. So how do we do it? Well, we want to do it fast. Because the whole time it's there, there's a cordon of soldiers protecting the area. And the longer they're there, the more likely insurgents are going to turn up and start shooting at them or attacking them. So fast saves lives. Okay, it also returns it to normality for the locals as well. We want to do it safely. So we want everyone in the team to return with the same number of limbs as they left home with. We also want to gather technical intelligence. So we want to do it properly in a kind of professional manner. So we're not just blowing crap up. We're actually trying to render things safe in a professional manner so we can gather forensics. So we explained the intent. We started having measures around these. So we started having targets. So especially on the time element, we knew how long it takes us to deploy certain things, how to get the wheelbarrow off and down the road. We know how long it takes to start set certain bits of kit up. And we start that iterative cycle of how can we get faster, how can we get safer. And it also set them, and it worked. So it started them. So basically the mission on this was, I already make these, we know what we do here. You know my intent for the team. You know what we're here to do. Let's make this better. So for example, we've been out on a mission and it had taken a bit too long and we were getting shot at and the cordon were getting shot at as we were trying to pack up. When we got back off during the hot wash, the general consensus was this was not a fun experience. How do we get better at packing up? So we've done lots of practice and lots of training at getting stuff out there and setting up and getting the wheelbarrow down the road fast and doing it quickly. But we really hadn't thought about how do we pack up faster without just bundling everything in the van, because we might need to go to another target. So again, left them to it, because I had another role as well, and they came back with solutions, multiple solutions that we started feeding in over the next few weeks, including cross-training some of the infantry soldiers to do things like drive the wheelbarrow and get things up. This one is, so I'm in the suit there, the infantry commander told me that their SOPs for if I became a casualty down the road was they were going to drive up in the snatch, and two of them were going to jump out and lift me up into the back of that. Now that suit is about 30 kilos. I am about 85 kilos. Yeah, and that step is about kind of that high, and the door's narrow. It just wasn't going to happen. So I said, right, okay, I'll put the suit on and go and lie down. It's like, prove it. So the two of them there, and I've got a series of other photos where a third one comes, and luckily I was wearing the armour because they dropped me so many times, and there was kind of the typical kind of effort in blinding, which kind of in the army passes as a punctuation. And eventually we just gave it up as a bad idea because it just wasn't going to happen. So, right, okay, so you need to go and figure out what you're going to do. Now, again, I could have told, it was fairly easy to figure out what's going to happen, like solutions, and I had some ideas. But again, didn't want to set up those bad behaviours of giving them solutions. So they went off and fixed it, and within 24 hours they came back and they created an improvised harness to go around my shoulders, and they put winches in the back of all the wagons. So the idea was that any one of our vehicles, they could drive up and winch me into the vehicle. They also had the harness set up so they could attach me to the tow hook. So if there wasn't time to winch me in, they could quite literally just attach me to the tow hook and drive back with me behind the vehicle. That's kind of in extremis, and we didn't test that one. I think the general solution was, you've got to be shitting me. So the next story is, okay, weapons intelligence. So I went on from bomb disposal, I was working in weapons intelligence. So weapons intelligence is the idea of trying to get intelligence out of the enemy's use of weapons. So predominantly IEDs. And we're trying to get technical intelligence, i.e. what they're using, where they're getting it from, how they're doing it. So our countermeasures, and I talked earlier about our TTPs, but also we want forensic evidence. We want biometrics, we have DNA, we want fingerprints. We want to be able to identify the people doing this. Now, at the time, we were doing a bit of local exploit, but then we were sending everything back to the UK for forensic exploitation. So the turnaround for getting forensics back was in the weeks to months timescale. We also had, in theatre, we had an intelligence fusion cell where they would take all the intelligence from all sorts of sources and fuse it together into one single intelligence picture of what's going on the ground, and that would inform operations. Now, the head of intelligence, he hadn't really been interested in my team because we weren't working in the fusion cell, we weren't providing actionable intelligence. So what's the point of our existence? So we had a talk about this, and he outlined his intent that he wanted us to be part of it. He could see the value in it. And so he basically gave me two missions. One is that we are to create the capacity to start contributing to the fusion cell. And secondly, we need to start getting the turnaround time faster. So I had my mission. How I went about it, that's my own business. Now, getting people to work in the fusion cell, I didn't have the capacity. So we had to start thinking about, at the time, when we as a weapons intelligence unit deployed, it was either myself or my warrant officer with some junior soldiers and junior NCOs and infantry deploying en masse. So, well, why are we all going out? So we started looking at, let's upskill the junior soldiers, give them some of the skill set that we're employing, and just embed them directly in the bomb disposal teams. And that meant me and my warrant officer didn't have to go on the ground anymore. We could suddenly stay back and start doing all this analysis in the fusion cell and start adding value. For the exploit, I had a mate who was working up in Baghdad with the American forensic exploitation. So we started sending stuff up there and started getting the turnaround in kind of hours and days rather than weeks and months. So again, it was that my boss had used mission command to explained to me what he was trying to achieve and what my mission was. But he hadn't had any, there was nothing about how he wanted me to do it. That was entirely up to me. And the last bit is providing resources. So at another stage in my time in my career, I was commanding a bomb disposal team that provides all the bomb disposal expertise for UK Special Forces, so for maritime intervention and for operations abroad. And because of that, we had to be able to kind of insert with them. So we had to have parachute. We had to be able to kind of, one of the things was oil rigs. We had to be able to access the underside of oil rigs. So that was all the high ropes and things like that. But again, it's getting that equipment and getting the resources for the teams to be able to do it, getting the training for them to be able to fulfill their purpose and fulfill their missions. To be honest, I think this bit, providing the support and resources, probably took about 40% of my time in that job. Just trying to access the right training and the right equipment to keep the troops adequately resourced. And also trying to keep enough soldiers there so we can have proper leave rotations. Like that. So this is where it starts getting more onto away from the leadership, more towards the management element. But if you're a crap manager, you can be best leader out there. But if you're a crap manager and you don't give your people the right resources, you're kind of turning into not a great leader. Okay. So before I go on to a conclusion, I'm just going to say, so we're doing all this continuous improvement, and why weren't we kind of perfect at everything? I was like, well, so here I'm training with a hostage rescue team and just dealing with a training device. And we had standard operating procedures for how we dealt with the various types of device on this type of mission. And those SOPs were owned by a medium to senior officer. Now, to change those SOPs, it takes lots of paperwork, applications, months. It takes a lot of time, jumping through hoops, bureaucracy. Okay. And it was almost so hard to do that you just wouldn't bother doing it because it's like banging your head against a brick wall. Now, this is me about a month later, and that's an Al-Qaeda bomb-making factory in Baghdad. There, the bureaucracy's gone. It's wartime, could change SOPs, drop of the hat, kind of. Still expected to go through kind of due diligence, so we still experiment with it, get it checked off by someone else just to make sure you're not going off at the deep end, and then get it written up. But you could do that. And the difference was, it's that war zone element. It removed the bureaucracy. Now, I'm sure everyone will have heard the stories from COVID, from the NHS, how prior to COVID, trying to get anything changed takes months or years. Whereas during COVID, people were in the NHS, they were changing their ways of working almost by the hour to keep up with the crisis. And I think I've seen something about Winston Churchill, kind of this thing, a quote of never waste a good crisis. And to be honest, even if you have to engineer a crisis, it's worth it just to get trying to get rid of the bureaucracy. But also try not to let it creep in again. So, this concept of mission command, it even goes down to how the army gives its orders. So we have what we call O groups. This is an O group for something going on in the field, and everyone's gathering around, and the leader's telling everyone there, okay, this is what we need. This is what we need to achieve. This is how I want to achieve it, and then giving the missions to the individual elements. And you can see it's all laid out there. So. And this could apply to anything. And the army, across the army, this is absolutely standard. Everyone uses it across the army, right the way from a corporal with commanding 7 or 8 soldiers. They will use this orders format for providing instructions to, say, attack a house, whereas a general commanding 30,000 soldiers will use the same format for kind of deploying into a country. Okay? It's the same format. Obviously, you'll have different elements and complexity in there, because moving 30,000 soldiers is a lot more complex than moving 8 soldiers. But it's the same format, and everyone in the army knows when they're sitting in an O group what to expect when. And also, by following that, it's kind of that handrail to make sure that when you're telling people what you need to get done, everyone, you know you've covered everything. You know that everyone at the end of it knows what the situation is. You know that everyone knows what the mission is that you as a group need to achieve. Everyone knows that what your intent and how you as a leader want to tackle this. And then everyone in your group knows what their individual missions and tasks are. So what you expect them to achieve. And all of that. And they know why they need to do it. Yeah, hope that makes sense. So I'm not going to go through it. This is all the stuff I've been going through so far. I know a lot of people like to take photos of slides, so I stuck this purely in if people want to take a photo. Otherwise, I'll skip past it. Cool. So, a few tips for using it. The culture and the climate, openness. Now, General Stanley McChrystal, you may or may have not have heard of him. He wrote a great book, Team of Teams. I highly recommend reading it. So he was in charge of all the US, UK and other ally special operations forces in Iraq and Afghanistan and various other theatres. So it's a massive organisation spread across several different continents, thousands and thousands of soldiers from lots of different countries. And he used to have a daily intelligence and operations briefing. And so you're thinking there kind of your executive committee, kind of board meeting sort of level. This is his senior generals from the different countries coming to it. It was an open invite that anyone in this organisation could join online. Right the way from kind of generals down to junior soldiers. Anyone could join. And you could listen in on what they're talking about, what they're deciding for the future. How empowering is that? I mean, I used to try and join in about once a week. And you felt so plugged in to the organisation and really understanding kind of the generals, the CEOs, what's in his head. Really, really empowering, really feel good. And to be honest, I never felt so plugged in before or after that. Bias to action. Those hot washes, you never ask what have we learned. It's always what are we going to do differently. And those action points, if there's too many of them, prioritise them and deliver those kind of top 3 or so, and then practice it again and see what changes. But it's got to be action points. And also the other thing, element of bias to action is, if in doubt, have an experiment and do something. It's better to do something than just keep on analysing it. Coaching failure and punish it. If someone's taking initiative and they've gone in the wrong direction, coach it, don't punish it. Because if you punish someone for taking initiative, they'll never do it again. They'll never take the initiative again. Okay. Seniority speaks last. So this is one of the ones, and I've heard a couple of other people talking about it in retrospectives. So the army has a court system. It's courts martial, and so for trying military offences, and the jury are officers and warrant officers. And when they're giving the verdict, what they think it should be guilty or not guilty, it goes in reverse rank order. So the junior officer isn't influenced by the senior officer. So we used to carry this over into hot washes. So we'd always speak in hot washes in reverse rank order. And that I can highly recommend that. That works really well because it means that the junior people aren't influenced by those more experienced. And it may, obviously in a lot of companies, you're not going to be talking in terms of seniority, it may be in terms of experience. So you may want to get the newest in reverse order of time on the team or experience or whatever. I don't know, it's just find your own system, but have something that's systematic, but also something that is going to get the less experienced and quieter people speaking up. I love Douglas Bader's quote on there as well. Developing the team, so that's building that shared purpose. It's that vision intent, we've talked about that quite a few times. Building mutual respect and trust. So building trust, one of these things, it's hard to do if you're constantly kind of nose to the grindstone at work. Trying to get that time away from your day-to-day work to go as a team and build that trust. So the army does a lot of adventure training and sports, and they use that a lot. So taking people out of the work experience and putting them functioning together as a team, but in a different environment and also under pressure. And also working on that freedom to take initiative. Developing yourself, that self-discipline. Letting go is really difficult. Okay? So it's that, because when you set someone to do something, you're kind of the old and bold, kind of, you've been there, you've seen it, you know exactly what needs to be done. But if you keep on telling people what they need to do, then they're never going to learn. They're never going to learn to take initiative. So when it comes to something where you don't know best, they're not going to take that initiative to speak up or go and do what's best because you haven't built that into them. Okay? So you've got to have that self-discipline to not intervene. Because also the other element is, just because they do it differently to how you do, doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It may just be different. Accepting risks as well. Again, it's built into self-discipline. Things will go wrong. You're going to put if you're following this, you're going to put your trust in people, and that trust will be betrayed, or they'll go off in an utterly random direction that you just could not possibly have predicted, but it worked in their head that this made sense. And you just got to roll with it. You've got to accept the risk of it because it will deliver far more often than it won't. Okay? And the idea is unless it's gone horribly wrong through negligence or bone idleness, then it's not about punishing, it's about coaching. And lastly, it's developing your subordinates. So it's building them up into being able to accept this responsibility and making those decisions. And confidence to make those decisions, I think a lot of that comes from professional knowledge. So if they really know their subject matter and they've got lots of experience in there, they're more likely to be able to make decisions around there. But also then decision making, that's a skill in its own right. So again, it's something you build and it's something people develop as they get experience of it. But again, you give people that experience of it by using this model and letting them get on with solving their own problems to achieve what you want them to achieve. And again, challenging them, especially if you can start pushing them to develop this. You can build their decision-making experience by giving them those problems to solve.
Thank you.
So, thank you.